Hello, and welcome again to another of our Kite Perspectives. This week we're covering the topic of marketing automation in higher education. With me today I have Remi Noubel. Remi, if you could introduce yourself and to the people at home.
Hi, Peter. I'm Remi. I'm a marketing automation manager for a large Australian university.
Cool, thank you. Higher education and marketing automation. I mean, we, as an organization, Kite Consulting has spoken to several universities in the past, and I've always gained a perception externally of marketing within higher education is really being focused on that acquisition. Kind of as students initially make their research into which universities they want to attend, they may go online, obviously, they may visit some fairs to kind of sound out the different universities before really shortlisting them, all providing very, very strong touch points for universities to communicate with them and be able to persuade them that their establishment is the best fit for a particular individual. Working through, the application process through to eventually, I guess, making the offers, acceptance of those offers, and then ultimately moving into that admissions phase where people are invited. I mean, the process of communication or marketing when placed like that is perceived as relatively linear and fairly straightforward. However, when we take a step back and from the conversations we've had with various universities, we see there's a much bigger picture behind this. Not only just the fact that there are multiple personas within higher education, not all students are starting at the beginning. It's not their first course. There are return students, mature students, there are current students who still need that communication to be enabled and ultimately working their way through to alumni, etc. There still needs to be that engagement and communication. When you take that step back, you realize actually marketing to students is a very, very complex event. Now, as somebody who's been through this process and actually looked at the higher picture, perhaps we can start by looking into some of the challenges that are offered within this particular environment for marketers in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on a very good point. It's a very, very complex and multi-layered journey, the student journey, and it is in no means just communicating to leads at the top of the funnel. The main challenges that I have personally faced, but I think are true for a lot of other universities, is that there's really three of them. The number one is that a lot of universities have some form of decentralized governance. So it's more or less true depending on the university. But that means that there's multiple divisions such as accommodation, admission, and faculties that are trying to communicate and get the message across to various audiences at multiple stages of the student life cycle. And they all try to achieve the same goal, but they have conflicting priorities. The messaging might be a little bit different. The look and feel might be different. And that's just for communication, but that also spills over the second challenge, which is the integration of data and systems between all those various entities. And that is directly linked to a decentralized governance as well, or and so the number one challenge is getting the right data at the right time and making sure that the data is accurate, because it can come from various sources. And the last challenge that is often strongly overlooked is the lack of understanding of what marketing automation actually is and what it can and can't do. And I think that's probably due a lot to the name that gives the wrong perception that marketing automation is a tool that can only be used for, marketing and the top of funnel activity, and really just talk to leads and people that are browsing around and looking for options for study. But marketing automation tools are a way of automating email communications, and that can be used for university in a very powerful way, as Peter mentioned, all the way along the funnel, from leads to applicants, offer holders, enrollees, current student, alumni, and can create some absolutely amazing user experience and highly customized journey that are very, very difficult to achieve with other tools.
So this disorganized governance, for want of a better word, effectively that's what you're saying is that's the root cause behind symptomatic cross communication, alternate messages. The fact that people are all looking at different faculties or different organizations are looking at potentially different audiences with different messages means that the data integration required, is disparate as well. And ultimately a lack of understanding of the actual abilities and the software solutions which are out there. Fundamentally, both those second two are effectively symptoms of that decentralized governance. It's quite a challenge to me. The educational organizations are huge. They're very, very large organizations. They're sometimes very, very siloed, as you say. So how do you go about addressing, what kind of tools bring essential benefits, and how do you actually address kind of that decentralization?
Yes, I'll take the example of how we did it, in a very concrete manner.
Yeah.
When I started as a marketing automation manager back in 2019, pre-COVID, we basically had our CRM set up and integrated with various lead capture. And then we had our marketing automation platform, which is Oracle Eloqua, that was set up. And because of lack of integration with central data, we were just using that when we started as a glorified MailChimp to send mass emails, get a list of data, have a campaign calendar. We have 4 emails, A, B, C, D. Here are the dates, and the day we are going to send this email, we get a list from the data warehouse, either to wash against the leads and make sure we're not talking to applicants, or send an email to applicants, and just send the emails this way. So our first step was to automate this process, because, well, we have a marketing automation platform. Why not automate this process? And so we just we basically just had a look at what is the core things that we need to automate this. And really, there were not that many. We just needed a flag to know when someone has applied or received an offer, and then we need some very basic identifier, which faculty they've applied for, which program they received an offer for, and maybe the offer date and things like that. So we really just looked at the core principle, and then how can we automate this data stream? Do we need a full integration, or can we just automate, start with Excel spreadsheet being automated to an inbox, and then someone, can upload the spreadsheet? And that's how we did it. So we just had a rapid prototyping approach, and we just tried to have the core fundamentals ready to automate what we were already doing. 3 emails sent to lead, let's just automate that. Let's not try to think big and integrate and talk to all the areas of the university and try to find everything needs to be done. Let's just start very small, see what works and what doesn't, keep what works, throw away what is useless or what doesn't work, and then iterate from there. And that's how we managed to automate. So it's been incredibly successful. And so the 3 principles were, as I mentioned, it was rapid prototyping and iteration, and then scalability. So everything we did, we tried to always keep scalability in mind. So that goes from data. We have data, to communicate, as I said, to leads and applicants. Well, maybe that architecture can then be used to talk to offer holders. How can we then, while we're building this, think about the next step and have those core architecture principles ready for the next steps? And then Eloqua has been absolutely instrumental in our success, because Eloqua is a great user-friendly no-code platform, and we don't need developers, .NET developers, data architects to develop something in Eloqua. Basically need people that are a little bit savvy and curious and bold, and then anything that you can think of pretty much can be designed in Eloqua, and that can actually become a base for further integration that fall outside of Eloqua with data integration and architecture.
Cool. So to summarize, I guess it's really you've taken a crawl, walk, run approach, starting small, starting with simple solutions, but then utilizing the ease of which Eloqua can be used by non-coding people to really dive then into essentially testing. It's test and learn, and
Absolutely.
Eloqua provides you with the agility to be able to handle that, to make quick decisions around what's actually working and what isn't working.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Eloqua has a lot of tools that is it is not just an email platform. It's actually a very, very powerful lead management system that comes with a big suite of data management and data automation out of the box, complete out of the box solution, and quite a high level of customization that is possible. And yeah, so because of all those tools, when we design with scalability in mind, we think about how we're going to test the success and the failure of each step. And it's not just sending emails and seeing, oh, we send email to that many people and we had a good open rate. Well, okay, well, that means that the targeting was good and the subject line was good. That doesn't really tell us much about, is it scalable? Is it something that we're going to use for the next step? So we use a lot of data tools that are available in Eloqua to track everything that we could track, really. And we started with over tracking, and then we realized that was a little bit too complex for reporting. And again, with this scalable iterative design approach, then we can throw away, all right, this was over tracking, let's just get rid of this and this, and let's just focus on what we actually need for the next step. So yeah, Eloqua has been absolutely amazing for that.
Cool. I do actually have a question around just something you mentioned earlier on with that crawl, walk, run approach. You mentioned manual handling of spreadsheets in the early days, kind of running that through. I'm wondering, with the decentralized government, getting access to the data that you require as you begin to scale, how did you find that within higher education establishments? Was there a lot of pushback? Did people want to retain their data, and how did you persuade people that this is what's needed to formulate a kind of end-to-end solution to communicate to everybody?
Yes, that was done before my time, and yes, it was a very, very, very difficult conversation. Lots of trade-off that had to be done. But the key thing, and it's still something we use today, is to focus on the student, the future student experience, or the current student experience, and everyone is reasonable, and if you talk about the centralized email communication times, everyone was sending emails whenever it was relevant to them. So as a future student that wanted to come to our university, you could sometimes receive absolutely nothing for 3 months, and then maybe there's a deadline coming, and on that day, you can get 10 emails in a single day. I mean, I'm exaggerating, of course, but there was no coordination of a user journey, and people completely understand that. We all live in the digital world. We all hate when we get spam and receive 2 or 3 emails at the same time because we bought something online and they say more or less the same thing. And yes, so just using this angle is a great leverage to get access to data. And yeah, it is everyone wants to keep the data close to their heart, and very very precious. In our case, we already had a data warehouse, so the data was centralized, so it was just having the chats to get access and get a governance around how we would handle and use this data.
Cool. So Obviously, as you mentioned, as different organizations or different establishments have different levels of that integration, that decentralized or centralized governance, and you were in a lucky situation where you had a consolidated data lake or data warehouse. As a result of going through this process, what would you really say are the key learnings for you, and ultimately that could be shared with other universities who may not have the I said the advantage that you had with the data warehouse? What are the key takeaway points that you'd say are relevant and you pulled away with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, the number one, the key to success of marketing automation is data. So, one way or another, this is where the focus needs to be. The data needs to flow to the marketing automation platform. It needs to flow, as and be refreshed as often as possible. And there are other solutions if there is no data warehouse. So there are CDPs that can be used to centralize the data, or there's now integration apps that are available through Oracle that can be used. But this is really the number one factor. So it's having this upstream conversation with, it might be the registrar, it might be admission, it's understanding who owns the data, how the data is currently being used, and how can we put a framework in place to centralize that data. The second learning is iterative design. That in a university context, where things are decentralized, and it's not just decentralization, it's just that there are a lot of moving pieces. And as you mentioned, we're talking about recruitment activities. Some of them might be in country, all the way to alumni and current student and accommodation, and then you have specific out of the box application process, maybe for research or MBAs or things like that. So it's just extremely complex, and iterative design allow this flexibility, and it allow to add something new all the time. And that's a very important point compared to waterfall, that in my opinion is just very, very, very hard. It's hard in general, but especially in universities, because there's always going to be, oh, we forgot about this little exception, and because of this little exception, then we can't execute the campaign correctly. So small wins and solid foundations through those small wins, and then building up just a brick at a time. That's really the key. And then with that goes hand in hand. Scalability is so I repeat myself a little bit, but scalability is super important. And scalability means being flexible, knowing what are those core principles that can't be broken down and that needs to be there for things to work properly. And it's always thinking about, how is what I'm doing today going to stand the test of time? And that can be emails. It can be making sure that there is as little as possible date-specific information in emails. Otherwise, that means a lot of work for content teams. If there are resources, it's great. But when there's limited resources, that's something that can take a lot of time. It's the same with data. It's making sure, is the data just for this application cycle, or how are we going to get the next application cycle without having to restart the work from the beginning? And then tracking is super important for scalability, because it will really help understand what is scalable and what is not scalable.
Yep.
Yeah, and then one last thing.
I was actually just going to ask, when going through and getting buy-ins from different levels of organization, how do you present? How do you take somebody, say particularly faculty, say alumni faculty, who have been doing this for years? They've got their own way of working it. How do you persuade them that your approach is going to prove beneficial to them? Are there any specific tools that you use?
Yes. So absolutely, and it's a good point, because technology can bore a lot of people, especially communication specialists. So it's just what we've been doing that's been very efficient, and it's actually very simple. It's just draw automation maps, diagrams, and that are really showing, here is your lead that you have talked to as, such and such fair. then they receive this email, and then they receive this email, and then they receive this email, and then if they click here, they receive this email, and people will just have a look and click through. So what we've been doing is having the emails hyperlinked, so people can click through and see what the email look like, and they click through for their particular cohort and their particular audience, follow the journey and really understand, just by putting themselves in the shoes of the student, really understand the value for the user journey. And that's the first step to get buy-ins. And that's been great to get buy-ins at absolutely every level of the university, from the very top to people that work every day on the floor. They just love seeing what the audience are going to see, and it makes it real. And then the second step is really selling how resource effective marketing automation can be. To give you an idea, last year in 2021, not 2019, we sent 1.8 million emails to a database of about 250,000 with 1.5 staff. So one full-time and one part-time staff. So when you start, talking to people that are used to send mass email one by one, get the data, build the email, and then once this email is built, it's gone and needs to be redone and restarted from scratch the following year, they can really see the benefits. So user journey and then resource efficiency, and then that really helps start the hard conversation about data ownership and who is responsible for what.
Yeah, those are actually incredible numbers. It's amazing the amount of work which the application of an automation tool can really reduce to just such a small staff. Really impressive. And congratulate you on the work that you've done developing that and building that over time, as you say. So, again, just stepping back to the life cycle of students, I'm kind of going to put you a little bit on the spot here. But during the life cycle, when people start off, they're first introduced to a higher education establishment, they may complete courses. There's obviously a lot of changes to that individual's profile. For example, the most obvious one is their email address is going to change over time. It may be a school-based email address, which as they become a student becomes then an academic email address. Ultimately, as they leave, it may become a personal or even work email address. As their life cycle journey changes, so does their profile. And that could also include things like addresses, etc. It's a very dynamic kind of profile to manage. I'm just wondering, we've heard a lot about CDPs. I know you're essentially, most universities have a big CRM. You mentioned you had a data lake. Are technologies such as CDPs kind of the holy grail for universities, do you think?
In the recruitment and marketing space, yeah, I really think it is. One of the big problem that we are seeing is, as you mentioned, the information changes, and we make a lot of efforts to integrate all the systems together and talk to each other, but we always end up with discrepancy between systems, and then there is, on top of everything you've mentioned, there's also the different stages of the journey, and that might be stored in different tables, different systems, and it's really hard to get that right data at the right time. And I think we all accept a certain degree of error when data is coming, because we are aware of this complexity. And so in that sense, yes, CDP is something that in our particular settings would be hugely helpful, to have a place where all the systems can feed in data and then update this data as it comes through. And then whoever needs this data can just retrieve and get the data as it is, most up to date, and that can come from various places of the university. And when I talk about all the work we've done, we really just, even if it's huge, we're just this little corner of the university, and then there's a lot of areas that are still disconnected and that don't even reach the data warehouse. So the CDP would just simplify things a lot. And for anyone who has worked with data warehouse, that it's incredibly useful, and the data is very rich, but it's so difficult to extract data and to modify it. So I was talking about rapid iteration. Rapid iteration with a data warehouse is a bit of a swear word. It's not something that you can do. So working with data warehouse, you need to really think thoroughly about what you're going to ask, because it's going to take them a lot of time to get everything to you and to automate that data feed. While with a CDP, the data is there, and then you can you can retrieve it. It just gives a lot more flexibility.
Yep. And of course, there are plenty of choice of CDPs out there and available. Just a final question, conscious of time. Do you see it's kind of a two-parter. Do you see what you've done as being used and applied within your organization as a model, as a kind of ideal situation? And are there any emergent technologies which you think could be included or should be embraced by universities or institutes of higher education?
That's a very hard question.
I told you I challenge you.
No, I mean it's I'm gonna have a bit of a tunnel vision here. Yeah, but marketing automation is as I said, the name is a bit misleading, and we've been talking a lot about email communication, but it works hand in hand with CDP, CRM, and it's just a way of automating and centralizing data, and then that can be used for amazing personalization. We were talking about how there are so many different steps of the journey, different personas. There are lots of tools that can allow website customization based on profile, such as Oracle Maximizer is a great example of how you can do that. And it's a new field that I think a lot of universities would benefit from. And the thing is that the audiences that universities are talking to, they are like anyone that is trying to talk to different audiences. They obviously will have different personas and different things, but with universities, there's very different real concerns between an international student that has to work out their visa, moving to Australia, pay international fees, and a domestic student that might be going 3 hours or 5 hours away from home, and the concerns are completely different. So it's just very hard to serve content, whether it's web, whether it's email, whether it's social, to those different audiences, and have something that is relevant to everyone. So I think that's an area where universities could work a lot on, and also keeping in mind that third-party cookies are going to be phased out eventually, and that there needs to be an urgent move to first-party, and there's a lot of groundwork that needs to happen before before anything impactful and substantial can happen.
Cool. Well, thank you. That's fantastic. It's been a great session, and just noticed we've actually hit the time. Thank you very much for your inputs today. It's been extremely informative and very educational. And thank you, Remi. I hope we'll speak soon. Just for everybody else, just to remind you that next week, our next kind of perspective is a look at no-code email creation and how this can empower the marketing agility within organizations, going from idea to finished email campaigns as quick as possible. I hope you can have the time to join next week. And with that, I'd like to say again, final thank you, Remi, and thank you everybody for watching today.